The hum of the engines reverberated through the metallic corridors of the Vanguard, Earth's flagship. Inside the warship's command deck, Admiral Kara Voss stood tall, her hands clasped behind her back, as she stared out at the vastness of space. Beyond the viewport, Earth itself seemed like a fragile blue jewel hanging in the void. Yet beneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing, one that would determine whether humanity would rise to dominance or be crushed beneath the boot of the Galactic Alliance. She could feel it, a tightening in her chest, the pressure of leadership bearing down on her. The warships of Earth had been preparing for this moment for years, but no amount of preparation could erase the dread that hung in the air. The countdown had begun, and with it, the final test of humanity's survival. "Admiral." The voice broke her thoughts. Commander Aiden Kerr, her most trusted officer, stood beside her, his face a mask of determination. "All fleets are in position. The Allies are ready to move out. The Vanguard is fully prepared to lead the strike." Voss nodded without turning away from the view. Her eyes narrowed as the familiar sense of purpose took hold. This was their moment, but it came at a cost. The Galactic Alliance, the most powerful force in the universe, had long seen humanity as an unpredictable element in a galaxy that thrived on order. They could not allow a species as volatile as humanity to challenge their reign. For centuries, Earth had remained isolated, but the Alliance had underestimated the resilience of its people. Now, the time for diplomacy was over. The warships were ready, and so were the humans. "We strike at dawn," Voss said, her voice unwavering. "The Alliance will not see us coming. This will be our fight, our victory. We will show them why humanity is not to be underestimated." A flicker of uncertainty passed through Kerr's eyes, but he quickly masked it. He'd seen what Earth's fleet could do, and he knew that their technology, although still evolving, could overwhelm the Alliance's best forces. What unsettled him wasn't the technology, it was the psychological war at play. The humans were facing a threat unlike anything they'd ever known, a force that wouldn't hesitate to burn entire worlds to the ground. The Alliance's leaders were ruthless, and there would be no mercy for Earth. "We've got allies," Admiral Kerr said, trying to reassure her. "We're not alone in this." Voss exhaled slowly, her gaze hardening. "The Allies will fight, but it is our will to win that will make the difference. Humanity doesn't bend, Kerr. We break the chains, or we die trying." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of history. The room fell into a tense silence, punctuated only by the low, rhythmic hum of the warship's engines. Voss knew this would be no ordinary war. This would be a war for survival, for the future of the human race, and the price of failure would be extinction. She glanced over at the tactical map, the digital lights casting a cold glow on her face. The fleet, Earth's finest, was positioned in the outer reaches of the solar system, ready to make their move. But the Alliance was already mobilizing. Earth's advantage lay in its unpredictability, and the humans would use that to their benefit. Their warships were more than just ships. They were extensions of their crews, their AIs evolving as the battle unfolded, adapting to every threat, every countermeasure. "We begin tomorrow," Voss said, her voice steady. "Prepare for the first wave. Let's show them what humanity is capable of." The dark void of space was alive with movement as Earth's fleet, under the command of Admiral Voss, surged toward their first engagement with the Galactic Alliance. The Vanguard led the charge, its sleek silhouette cutting through the stars like a predator stalking its prey. Behind it, a dozen other warships, each more formidable than any of the Alliance's conventional fleets, followed in tight formation. The air in the command deck was thick with tension. Crew members moved swiftly, coordinating the final checks before battle. Admiral Voss stood at the center of the room, her sharp eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. It showed the positioning of the Galactic Alliance's forces, a colossal fleet of over 50 warships, a fleet designed to crush opposition in a matter of minutes. Their flagship, Oblivion's Edge, loomed like a dark monolith at the center of the formation, its weapons primed and ready. "Their fleet is massive," Kerr said, his voice tight with concern as he studied the data. "But we have the element of surprise. If we strike fast, we can hit them where they least expect it." Voss nodded, her expression hardening. "We won't waste time. This will be a surgical strike, quick and lethal. We don't give them a chance to regroup. If they're expecting a standard battle, they'll be in for a rude awakening." With a decisive motion, she activated the ship-wide comms. "All fleets, this is Admiral Voss. Engage the enemy at full speed. The first strike begins now. We will hit them where it hurts." The battle was upon them. The first volley of energy blasts erupted from Earth's fleet, each shot cutting through the blackness of space with terrifying precision. The Alliance had no idea what was coming. Their ships, designed for overwhelming power rather than agility, were caught off guard as Earth's warships, lighter and faster, darted in and out of range, firing their devastating energy weapons with deadly accuracy. The Vanguard unleashed its primary weapon, a massive, concentrated energy pulse that struck the lead Alliance destroyer, Aegis, sending it spiraling into chaos. But despite the devastating firepower of Earth's fleet, the Alliance retaliated with brutal force. Waves of energy blasts rained down on the human ships, and the sound of explosions echoed through the warships' hulls as shields flickered and strained. The Vanguard shuddered, the impact reverberating through the decks. A nearby ship, Horizon's Dawn, took a hit and began to break apart, its crew struggling to abandon ship in the chaos. Voss gritted her teeth, eyes flickering between the tactical map and the battlefield outside. "Commander Care, get us into position to strike the flagship. If we can disable Oblivion's Edge, the rest will fall." A small, sharp smile tugged at Care's lips as he took his seat at the helm. "You've got it, Admiral." The Vanguard veered to the left, dodging incoming fire, and then shot forward at full speed. Behind them, Earth's warships followed suit, weaving through the Alliance's fire, using the chaos to their advantage. Earth's AIs, each ship designed with a unique personality and combat style, began to exhibit an unpredictable ferocity, launching surprise attacks, exploiting weaknesses, and countering Alliance tactics in real time. But the battle was far from over. The Alliance was regrouping, their larger warships closing in, flanking Earth's fleet with precision. Voss could feel the pressure mounting. This was no longer a simple skirmish. It was a test of humanity's resolve, of Earth's place in the universe. "We're pushing them back, Admiral," Care called out, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and disbelief. The Alliance didn't see this coming. Voss didn't respond right away. Instead, she watched the battlefield unfold, noting the sheer scale of the conflict. For every Alliance ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear in their place. But Earth's fleet was relentless, and with every passing minute, their confidence grew. Each strike from the Vanguard was a statement. Humanity would not cower. They would fight for their future. As the Oblivion's Edge drew closer, Voss saw an opening. With a final, calculated maneuver, Earth's fleet unleashed a barrage of fire on the flagship, striking its weak points with pinpoint accuracy. The hull of Oblivion's Edge began to fracture, its massive weapons falling silent. "We've crippled their flagship," Care reported, his voice reverberating with triumph. "It's going down." Voss allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before her gaze shifted back to the battlefield. "This is just the beginning. Keep pushing. We need to end this before they can regroup." But as Earth's forces moved in for the final blow, a dark realization began to settle in. The Alliance was far from beaten. They had suffered a setback, but the war had only just begun. The stars burned like cold, distant beacons as the aftermath of the first battle settled into eerie silence. Earth's fleet, battered but unbroken, limped back to the safety of the solar system's outer limits. The Vanguard, its hull scarred from the battle, drifted just beyond Earth's atmosphere. Inside, the command deck was filled with a tense, uneasy quiet. The crew moved quickly, but their steps were heavy, weighed down by the lives lost and the harsh reality of what lay ahead. Admiral Voss stood at the front of the command deck, her face etched with a quiet resolve. Despite their victory, the feeling of triumph was short-lived. The Galactic Alliance had underestimated humanity once, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. It was clear now that they had no intention of letting Earth off the hook. If anything, their resolve had only hardened. "Admiral," Commander Kerr's voice cut through the silence, bringing her back to the present. "The Alliance has regrouped. They're not done. We've hit them hard, but they've called for reinforcements. Their next wave is already on the way." Voss clenched her fists, her mind racing. The fight had only just begun. Earth had won the first battle, but the Alliance was vast, and they weren't just going to roll over. The situation was about to escalate into something much more dangerous. "Get me the fleet, commanders," she said, her voice steady, though there was an edge of tension that even she couldn't hide. Kerr nodded and quickly transmitted the request. Within moments, a holographic display materialized in front of Voss. Several senior officers appeared, their faces a mix of determination and concern. General Tara Evers, a seasoned strategist, was first to speak. "Admiral, we need to act now. The Alliance is bringing in their heavy hitters. If we don't strike them before they can establish their full force, we risk losing the initiative. We can't afford to let them recover." Voss took a deep breath. The strategy they were considering was dangerous, risky, even, but it was the only way forward. "I agree. But we're not just going to rush in blindly. We'll need to cut through their ranks quickly, disrupt their command structure. We'll use the same guerrilla tactics, hit them where they least expect it." "Agreed," Evers replied, her eyes lighting up with understanding. "I'll have my fleet in position within the hour. We'll strike at their supply lines and weaken their support ships before they can bring their reinforcements to bear." The plan was set in motion. Earth's fleet would strike deep into Alliance territory, targeting vulnerable supply chains and outlying stations, crippling their ability to regroup and reinforce their main battle groups. The hope was that, with their support crippled, the Alliance's ships would be forced to retreat, giving Earth the time it needed to prepare for the next wave. As Voss turned to issue orders, a sudden alarm blared through the command deck. The threat was immediate. An incoming attack. The Vanguard sensors blazed with warning lights as a large formation of Alliance warships appeared on the radar, moving at astonishing speed. A new wave had arrived, and it was massive. "They've sent everything they have," Kerr muttered, his fingers flying across the controls. "This isn't just reinforcements. It's their elite fleet." Voss's mind raced. The Alliance had responded quickly, perhaps too quickly. It seemed as though they had anticipated Earth's next move. The battle they had just fought had been a mere prelude. Now, the true test would begin. "All ships, prepare for combat," Voss ordered, her voice cold with resolve. "We're going in, and we're going in fast. Every ship, every crew member. This is the moment we prove humanity's place in the galaxy." As the fleet scrambled to battle stations, the full scale of the Alliance's power came into view. A vast armada of colossal dreadnoughts and advanced war machines filled the space in front of Earth's fleet. Among them, the Annihilator, the Alliance's most feared warship, loomed like a massive shadow, its weapons charged and ready to fire. Admiral Voss's eyes narrowed as she watched the Annihilator move into position. This was the real threat. A single hit from that ship could wipe out entire fleets. It was said to be capable of obliterating planets with its devastating energy weapons. The stakes had just been raised to a terrifying new level. "Commander Kerr," Voss said, her voice calm but resolute, "focus all fire on that ship. We take out the Annihilator, and the rest will fall." Kerr nodded. "Understood, Admiral. All ships, follow my lead. Let's show them what humanity can do." Earth's fleet surged forward, faster than ever before, weaving in and out of incoming fire. The battle had begun in earnest, Voss knew this fight would be like nothing they'd faced before. There would be no room for mistakes. But if humanity had learned anything from the first wave, it was this. They were not to be underestimated. As the first volley of laser fire from the annihilator crackled through space, Voss gritted her teeth. The fight for Earth's future was far from over. But in her heart, she knew one thing. No matter the cost, they would not go down without a fight. The Vanguard surged through the chaos, its engines firing relentlessly as it carved a path toward the looming annihilator. The ship shuddered under the weight of incoming fire, shields flickering dangerously as the Alliance's devastating weapons struck in waves. Every moment felt like an eternity. Inside the command deck, the tension was palpable. Crew members worked feverishly, eyes wide with fear, yet focused with unyielding determination. Admiral Voss stood at the center of it all, unflinching. The annihilator was unlike anything Earth had encountered before. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of the Alliance's dominance, a towering fortress of destruction. The Alliance had made it clear that they would not go down without bringing every ounce of their might to bear. But Voss wasn't about to let that fear paralyze her. If they were going to fall, it wouldn't be without a fight that shook the stars themselves. "Commander Care," Voss shouted over the noise of alarms. "We need to disable their energy core. We can't keep dodging these blasts forever." Care's face was a mixture of sweat and resolve, his hands flying over the controls. "I'm already on it, Admiral. The annihilator's weak point is its ventral core. If we can get underneath it, we might have a shot at hitting it with a concentrated energy pulse." Voss nodded grimly. "Get us in position. We don't have much time." The Vanguard accelerated, weaving through the barrage of energy blasts from the annihilator and the surrounding Alliance warships. The blackness of space seemed to close in on them, the vastness of the battlefield suffocating. Earth's ships fought fiercely, but the sheer size and firepower of the Alliance made every engagement feel like an uphill battle. Explosions rang out from every direction, and the once pristine void was now filled with debris, broken ships, and the remnants of shattered dreams. "We've lost the Horizon's dawn," Care reported, his voice strained. It was hit directly by a plasma beam. No survivors. The news struck like a cold fist, but Voss didn't allow herself to show weakness. There was no room for mourning now. Not yet. Not until the war was over. "Keep moving, Care," Voss barked, her voice sharp as a blade. "We don't stop. Not for anyone." The Vanguard's AI, ORA, interjected with a calm but urgent tone. "Admiral, incoming enemy fighters, 500 strong. They're preparing to swarm the fleet." "Not now," Voss muttered. She gripped the command console tighter, focusing. "Care, we can't afford to be distracted. Do whatever it takes to disable that flagship. We'll handle the fighters." Care's fingers moved with precise speed as he fired commands to the rest of the fleet. "All ships, fall into defensive formations. Focus all fire on the incoming fighters. Don't let them get past us." The battlefield erupted into a frenzy as Earth's warships split into squads, engaging the incoming wave of fighters with relentless fury. The air was filled with the sounds of combat, laser blasts, and explosions. The Alliance's superior numbers began to take a toll, but the human fleet held its ground, fighting with a ferocity born of desperation and defiance. Meanwhile, the Vanguard weaved its way beneath the annihilator, preparing for the final push. The massive warship loomed above them, its intimidating size a constant reminder of how outmatched they were. But Admiral Voss had made a promise, to herself, to Earth, and to every man and woman in this fleet. She would see this battle through to the end. "We're in position," Care called out, his voice tense, locking onto the core. "Prepare for the shot." Voss took a deep breath. Fire. A pulse of energy shot forward from the Vanguard, striking the annihilator's ventral core with pinpoint accuracy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant, blinding flash of light erupted from the flagship's lower hull, and the annihilator screamed in agony as its energy systems faltered. The massive warship staggered, its weapons falling silent, as it was thrown off balance. But it wasn't over yet. The Annihilator was far from destroyed, and its remaining firepower roared in retaliation. The final wave of the battle was just beginning. The blinding flash from the Annihilator's damaged core had been brief, but in that moment, a glimmer of hope had shone through the darkness of space. For a fleeting second, it seemed as though Earth might pull off the impossible. But the moment passed, and reality came crashing back in. The Annihilator wasn't finished. Far from it. The massive warship began to stabilize, its crippled systems slowly coming back online. The gleaming surface of its hull, once shimmering with pride, now showed signs of deep burns, but its weapons were still functional, and they were aimed directly at Earth's fleet. "Admiral, they're charging up for another strike." Commander Kerr's voice was laced with urgency as the Vanguard shuddered again from the reverberating shockwaves of the Annihilator's retaliatory blast. The ship's shields flickered dangerously. Voss didn't flinch. She had seen this before. When it seemed like all hope was lost, humanity found a way to fight on. But she also knew they couldn't keep trading blows with a ship of that magnitude. They were running out of time. And worse, they were running out of allies. Earth's fleet had already suffered heavy losses, and the damage to their warships was starting to show. The fighters were scattered, and even the Vanguard was far from intact. "Commander Kerr," she said, her voice steady despite the rising pressure, "we need to take that ship down. Now." Kerr nodded, his face pale but resolute. "I'm calculating the trajectory for another strike. But with those shields up, we won't get through without heavy losses. We need more firepower, something to take out their energy grid for good." Voss glanced at the tactical map, her mind racing. The Alliance had expected a fight, but this was beyond what anyone had imagined. The Annihilator was a juggernaut, designed to crush civilizations, and yet, here it was, struggling to maintain control against Earth's fury. There had to be a way to finish this. A sudden voice broke into her thoughts. "Ore," the Vanguard's eye. "Admiral, I have detected a vulnerability in the Annihilator's upper hull. It appears that their auxiliary power grid is heavily exposed. A direct strike at that location could disable their remaining systems." Voss's heart raced. This could be their only shot. "Commander Kerr," she snapped, "prepare for a full assault on their upper grid. Concentrate all remaining firepower on that section. We take out their power, and they won't be able to retaliate." "Understood, Admiral." "Focusing weapons now," Kerr responded, his fingers flying over the controls. The Vanguard's turrets locked onto the target, and the remaining ships of Earth's fleet followed suit, pouring every last ounce of their firepower into the vulnerable section of the Annihilator's hull. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't precise. But it was a desperate gamble, the kind that had become the hallmark of humanity's survival. The energy pulse from Earth's fleet slammed into the Annihilator's exposed core, causing a violent cascade of sparks and explosions to erupt across its surface. For a moment, the massive warship seemed to freeze, its momentum stalling as it reeled from the hit. But then, a deep, guttural rumble echoed through space as the Annihilator's power began to fail. Its weapons went silent, its shields flickering erratically. "We did it," Kerr shouted, his voice filled with disbelief and triumph. But Voss wasn't celebrating. She knew this wasn't over yet. The Alliance might have lost their flagship, but they were far from defeated. And more importantly, they weren't alone. The remaining forces were gathering. The Annihilator, once the beacon of the Alliance's power, was crippled, but Voss knew that it wasn't the final blow. The Alliance was more ruthless than ever. They had lost the battle, but they would fight to the death. And in this war, there was no such thing as a clean victory. As Earth's fleet regrouped, their losses staggering, Voss felt the weight of the moment. For the first time, the scales had tipped in humanity's favor, but the road ahead was paved with uncertainty. And yet one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer a mere participant in this galactic conflict. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Annihilator's destruction was a hard-won victory, but the costs were steep. Earth's fleet had taken heavy casualties. The Vanguard, though still functional, was barely holding together, its hull pockmarked with burn marks and fractured plating. The damage wasn't just physical. The morale of the crew had been shaken. They had survived the most intense battle of their lives, but victory had come at the price of far too many lives. Admiral Voss stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, gazing out into the vastness of space. The remnants of the battle were scattered across the void. Shattered debris, the smoldering ruins of destroyed ships, and the distant, ghostly glow of dying stars. It was a sobering sight. The war had become a brutal, unforgiving reality, and they were no longer fighting for mere survival. They were fighting to define the future of humanity. Admiral. Commander Kerr's voice cut through the silence, pulling Voss back to the present. We've received the final tally from the fleet. Over a third of our ships are destroyed, and many of our remaining vessels are too damaged to fight again. We've lost contact with Titan's Wrath and Raven's Reach. We're down to just 6 operational ships. Voss turned to face him, her expression hard. How many casualties? Over 10,000, not counting those still trapped on the wrecks. The weight of the numbers hit her like a punch. She had known the risks, understood the stakes, but the reality of the losses was something else entirely. These were not just soldiers and sailors. They were fathers, mothers, children, friends. The pain of losing so many good people, especially in the name of a war that seemed endless, was unbearable. But there was no time for mourning. Earth's fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Alliance might have lost their flagship, but they still had the upper hand in terms of numbers. The next wave would come, and Earth had no guarantee that they could win again. If they were going to survive, they needed to hit the Alliance where it hurt most, and they needed to do it quickly. Voss took a deep breath, forcing the weight of her grief down into the pit of her stomach. She couldn't afford to break. Not now. Commander Kerr, what's the status on their reinforcements? Kerr's face tightened as he looked over the data. We intercepted communications. They're assembling a counteroffensive near the Zeta system. They've also begun mobilizing the rest of their fleet from the outer colonies. If we don't act fast, they'll have enough forces to crush us. Voss's eyes narrowed. The Zeta system was a strategic hub, home to vital Alliance supply lines, and a key staging area for their military forces. If Earth's fleet didn't stop them now, the Alliance would be able to flood the galaxy with reinforcements. We strike now, Voss ordered, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. We won't give them a chance to regroup. We hit them at setup before they can set up their full force. But Admiral, Kerr hesitated, his voice laced with caution. We're outnumbered. We've just lost a third of our fleet. Even with our best efforts, we won't stand a chance against their full forces. We don't have a choice, Voss responded, her voice firm, her gaze unwavering. We hit them hard, now, while they're still vulnerable. If we wait, they'll be ready for us. We need to take the fight to them, no matter the cost. Kerr didn't respond immediately. The weight of Voss's decision hung heavy in the air. They were risking everything, and the outcome was uncertain at best. But Kerr knew better than to question her resolve. She had led them through the first wave, and if there was one thing Voss had shown time and again, it was that she wouldn't back down, not in the face of overwhelming odds. Understood, Admiral, Kerr said at last, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. I'll begin preparing the fleet for immediate departure. Voss turned back to the viewports, her mind working furiously. Every instinct told her to be cautious, to regroup, to wait until their fleet had recovered. But deep down, she knew there was no time. If they waited for the Alliance to fully mobilize, Earth would be faced with a force they couldn't defeat. The final decision had been made. She would gamble everything. And if humanity was going to survive this war, they would need to fight with everything they had left. Earth's fleet limped into the Zeta system, battered, broken, and barely holding together. The remaining ships, only 6 in total, moved in a tight formation, each one limping on weakened thrusters, struggling to maintain a semblance of order. The damage from the previous battles was evident: burned-out hulls, shattered communication arrays, and flickering shields that barely managed to hold up under the constant barrage of minor enemy fire. But the fleet was determined. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans pressed forward, their survival instinct burning brighter than ever. Admiral Voss stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her knuckles white, as she gripped the command console. Despite the pain and fatigue that threatened to pull her under, her focus was unyielding. The Alliance had regrouped, and the enemy's reinforcements were now just a few jumps away, closing in on their position. This was it, Earth's last chance to cripple the Alliance before it could completely overwhelm them. If they failed, the galaxy would descend into an unrelenting wave of destruction, and humanity would be swept aside like a forgotten memory. "Commander Care," Voss said, her voice sharp and authoritative, "where are the enemy ships?" Care's face appeared on the holographic display, his expression grim. "Scans show a sizable fleet already in place, Admiral. At least 50 ships, including their remaining dreadnoughts and multiple capital ships. The rest of the fleet is still on its way, but they've already set up a blockade." The plan was simple in theory but impossible in execution. Earth's remaining forces had to break through the blockade, strike at the heart of the Alliance fleet, and disrupt their command center. If they could hit the enemy's coordination systems, they might just be able to throw their forces into disarray. But to do that, they had to survive long enough to get close enough to strike. Voss didn't hesitate. "We'll engage them head-on. We'll keep their attention on us while the rest of the fleet slips in behind and hits their command center. We don't have room for mistakes. This is the only shot we have left." Care nodded grimly, adjusting his plans. "Understood, Admiral. I'll coordinate the fleet's movements and get them into position. But we'll need to move fast." The Vanguard surged forward, followed closely by the remaining Earth ships. The Alliance blockade loomed ahead, a wall of metal and firepower designed to crush any force that dared to challenge it. The enemy ships were massive, their weapons charged and ready to rip apart anything that ventured too close. The odds were staggering. Earth's fleet was vastly outnumbered, their ships in worse shape than they had ever been, and their resources running low. But the humans had one advantage: the element of surprise. The Vanguard's engines roared as it hurtled toward the enemy lines, breaking through the blackness of space like a comet in a storm. The battle began almost instantly as Alliance ships turned their fire on the humans, their guns blazing in a furious attempt to repel the incoming assault. But Earth's fleet, despite its weakened state, fought with an intensity that defied reason. Laser blasts streaked across space, narrowly missing the Vanguard as it dodged and weaved between enemy ships. The Vanguard's remaining turrets returned fire, sending concentrated energy pulses toward the enemy dreadnoughts, though it seemed like a futile effort. Each shot felt like it was swallowed by the overwhelming tide of fire coming from the Alliance. "Admiral, the enemy's fighters are launching," Care called out, his voice strained as explosions rattled the deck. "We've got incoming from all sides." "Hold steady," Voss ordered, her tone unwavering. "All ships, focus on the enemy's command vessels. The fighters are a distraction. We need to take out their leadership or we'll be overwhelmed." The humans fought with everything they had left, throwing all their resources into the strike. The battle became a maelstrom of fire and debris, where every moment could mean the end. Each ship was in a fight for its life, but Earth's fleet held its ground. The Vanguard fired relentlessly, smashing through the enemy lines, its weapons charging with every shot. But the Annihilator's former comrades were not to be underestimated. A barrage of fire erupted from the enemy flagship, slamming into the Vanguard's shields, and the ship rocked violently as the hull groaned under the pressure. A piercing alarm rang out on the command deck. "Shields down to 30%, Admiral," Care reported, his voice strained. "We can't take another hit like that." Voss's heart pounded in her chest. They were on the brink of collapse, but they were not giving up. Not yet. We're almost there. Push forward. For Earth, for humanity. As the final wave of enemy fire rained down, Earth's ships plunged into the heart of the Alliance blockade. The battle was no longer a question of survival. It was a matter of giving everything they had left, right down to the last breath. The battle had become a chaotic storm of fire and desperation. Earth's fleet, reduced to a mere handful of ships, pressed forward through the relentless barrage of enemy fire. The Vanguard shuddered with every impact, its shields flickering dangerously, yet it pressed on, cutting through the Alliance blockade with the ferocity of a cornered animal. Admiral Voss stood firm on the command deck, her eyes never leaving the holographic display as the battlefield unfolded around her. The fight had devolved into a desperate brawl. Earth's forces, though outnumbered and outgunned, had one thing the Alliance could never replicate: unshakable resolve. And in this war, that made all the difference. "Commander Kerr," Voss's voice was steady, though every word came with a cost. "Status report. How are we doing?" Kerr's face appeared, his expression grim, but there was a spark of determination in his eyes. "We've breached their front lines, but we're taking heavy fire. The remaining ships can barely keep up. Our engines are running at critical levels, and our ammunition stores are almost empty. If we don't hit their command center soon, we won't make it out." Voss clenched her fists, her gaze steely. The time for tactics was over. They had to act now, or they would lose everything. "We go for the command center. All ships, focus fire on the Central Fleet command vessel. This is the final push. We end this now." The remaining Earth ships, battered and broken, turned their guns on the central hub of the Alliance fleet. The enemy's command vessel, a massive behemoth of steel and firepower, loomed in the center of the battlefield like an impenetrable fortress. But it was their only shot. If they could bring it down, they might destabilize the entire Alliance formation. The Vanguard surged forward, its engines roaring as it pushed through the chaos. Enemy fire exploded around them, a constant torrent of energy beams and missiles. But the Vanguard remained undeterred, weaving between explosions and returning fire with pinpoint precision. "We're locking onto their command vessel," Kerr reported. "Weapons charged, ready to fire." "Do it," Voss ordered without hesitation. The Vanguard unleashed a concentrated burst of energy, a beam so powerful that it cut through the enemy blockade like a knife through butter. The blast struck the command vessel dead center, creating a massive explosion that tore through its hull. The shockwave sent ripples through the battlefield, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The enemy ships faltered, disoriented. But the victory was short-lived. A new wave of enemy reinforcements, faster than expected, arrived at the edge of the system. Their numbers were overwhelming, and the sheer scale of their ships made Earth's remaining fleet look like insignificant specks in the vastness of space. "We've got incoming," Kerr warned, his voice tight with panic. "More dreadnoughts, too many to count. Admiral, we can't take another wave like this. We're running out of time." Voss's heart raced, but her mind remained clear. The Vanguard's remaining weapons were barely operational, and the shields were on the verge of failure. But this was it, the last stand. They had come too far to back down now. "Prepare to fight to the last," Voss said, her voice low but resolute. "For Earth, for humanity." The fleet's remaining ships formed up around the Vanguard, taking the brunt of the incoming fire, their shields flickering and failing as they bought precious seconds for the flagship to regroup. The battle became a blur of explosions, of soldiers dying in the vast emptiness of space, of ships breaking apart as they tried to hold the line. And then, in the distance, something changed. A sharp pulse of light erupted from the enemy's command ship, followed by a massive, thunderous explosion. For a brief moment, the fleet fell silent, and Voss's breath caught in her throat. Had they done it? Had they managed to deliver the killing blow? But as the dust settled, The truth became clear. The Alliance had activated their final weapon, a ship that had been hidden in the shadows, a weapon of unimaginable power, a ship so large and so destructive that it could erase entire systems with a single strike. "We've got one more chance," Voss muttered to herself. One last shot. With nothing left to lose, Voss made the call. "All ships, follow my lead. Full speed ahead. We'll take down that weapon, or we'll die trying." The remaining ships of Earth's fleet, fueled by a mix of desperation and defiance, surged forward, charging toward the heart of the Alliance's remaining force. In this final, cataclysmic moment, humanity was about to prove that it would not be so easily wiped away. This was the final wave, the last stand. And no matter the cost, they would fight until the very end.